Yeah. Hi, my name is Hanne. I am a PhD student at the University of Iceland, and at first I want to thank the Association of Environmental Scientists for inviting me here. I have, during my PhD and master studies at the University of Iceland, participated in 2 studies that me and my colleague have done about hydrogen sulfide, and one was about the dispensing of asthma medications, which some of you may have heard about, and then there is one about acute hospital admissions and ER visits for cardiovascular and pulmonary lung diseases that at first did not have so much to do with hydrogen sulfide, but the later part will. Yes. So I started studying air pollution in Iceland. We started in 2007 or 8, and hydrogen sulfide was not the main focus. We thought this was the main problem, the traffic, and then there was the volcanic eruption, and so forth and so on. But it turned out when we started analyzing the data from the asthma medication, that hydrogen sulfide was a factor. So I'm just going to go step back a bit and tell a bit about the methods that we used. We used pharmaceutical dispensing. So when a person goes to the pharmacy to buy a prescription medicine for asthma, and that is in an international study been used as a proxy for the respiratory health in a population. So you will anticipate that if people who use these medications, who are prescribed for a number of various diseases and for various severity, and some people use them all the time, and some people use them intermittently and only take a dose when they have to. But our hypothesis was that if the air quality was bad, people would increase their dosage and somehow go and buy medications before they would have done without the pollution. So this is basically what this slide shows, that you have an exposure of some sort, and the red line, and then there you want to study an outcome, and the time that goes from that peak to that is called a lag. So we had a data set for this study from 2009 to 2006 to 2009 from all adults who had a postcode residence in the capital area. And that was about somewhere around 30,000 individuals who had at some point taken out any asthma medication. Most of them were women, 48 years old, and the mean was 5 dispensings during the study period. But there were a lot of people who just went once, because these medications are also given for a variety of, if you have a bronchitis and you need some relief, you get this. But again, the same hypothesis, the air pollution should make it worse. So we're working under the same assumption that if there's air pollution, we will see more dispensing. Then we had pollution data, and we used regression models, and we included lags up to 14 days. And just going to spend a bit of time on this slide, because there will be a lot of these plots. So these are the results from the study that I did in my master's study, and some of you have, these results have been discussed in the Icelandic media widely. But this is a lag plot. And on the y-axis you have the time. So this here is lag 0 to 2. So this is the same day as the pollution exposure, the day before and the day before that. And you have lag 3 to 5, so that's 3 to 5 days before, 6 to 8 days, and up to 14. On the y-axis, you have a measure called the relative risk, but this corresponds to the 1.02, corresponds to that at a 2% increase. So what this means is that when there's a 3-day period where the mean hydrogen sulfide increases by 10 microgram per cubic meter, we will, at the same day and 2 days after, there will be no change, but 3 to 5 days after, there will be an increase of 3% in the number of people who go to the pharmacy and take out asthma medications. And then it sort of levels off here, and then it goes a bit up again. But you expect this leveling off because you're displacing the people who would have gone after 10 days. They end up going up after 5 days because they've increased their dosage. That's what this shows. So this was published in 2012, but since I got invited to talk for 20 minutes and I can't talk so long about that, I did some further analysis. Þröstur was telling us about how the hydrogen sulfide comes from the Headless Head power plant, and one of the problems with this study was that it was an ecological study where we considered the whole of the capsule area as one, but we had only any exposure metric from the Grensásveg measuring station, which is located somewhere around here, and the Headless Head is out here. So I had information about postcode, or I got that in a later data set. So if you imagine this plume here, and then we had the postcodes, and then it was possible to say that, well, these people here would be the ones that we could have some meaningful exposure from the Grensásveg measuring station. And then even you could say that the ones who were on this side of Elliðaárdalur and Kópavogur, so the ones out here, they're probably more exposed than the ones on the other side. So that was something I tried to do. So I split the data. So this is the same result, basically, for the area which is east here. And here I showed you two different outcomes, because one of the problems we had with the data is that some of the pollutants that you adjust for are, like the ozone values, for example, for 2010 were very strange. So these data here, there's pairs, and one is adjusted for other pollutants. That's the one to the left, and the one is not adjusted for other pollutants. That's the one to the right. And was glad to see that most of the time they don't divert too much, but as this was a concern, we didn't. I wanted to show both results, so I'm not on the going too far with the data here, and these results are well, a bit. They're sort of preliminary. I also should say that they're all adjusted for weather, and we adjust for time trend in various ways, and day of week is quite important. But the thing that happens when you split the data like this is that you lose a lot of the statistical power. So there's not a whole lot of significant stuff going on here. But if you remember the previous slide, then the effect was peaking at 3 to 5, and then it went down. Whereas here, you seem to have a signal that lasts all the way until day 8, which I find kind of interesting. Though this is not, as long when they cross the line here, it's not statistically significant, but I still think this is somewhat of a signal. If you take the area west, which should then be have a smaller signal somehow, we can see that the estimates, the combined estimates here is a bit smaller, also because it levels off. The effect seems to disappear after day 5. The trend is down. I also split by age. So this is the people who are over 60 years old. And here you seem to have some effect at like 3 to 5, but then not so much. Younger than 60 years old, we have more significant results, but the same. The effect levels off after 5 days. I split by gender. So these are the males. We see that there's almost only an effect at 3 to 5 day lag. And the females are somewhat different. We have a positive trend up to lag 8, but then it levels off, and we have some significant results here in the unadjusted estimates. So to summarize, for hydrogen sulfide and asthma medication, the version 2.0, we found that there was we had an increased sales in asthma medication after 3 to 5 days, but it seems to be that stronger association in women. And this is when you pull the coefficients from the whole period, so that's from day 0 to day 14 days after, you have a 3.8% increase in the women, but only in men you have 2.5. And it seemed to be higher in younger than older. And the area did seem to make a difference. We had a bigger estimate in east than in west. And then I didn't show the plot for south, but it was mainly flat. South area here in this respect is Garðabær, Hafnarfjörður and beyond. And when I talk about that there's no effect with respect to that we have the exposure measurement in this study is Grensásvegur. So we can't, it's not that they don't have any effect, but in this study they come out as insignificant because their exposure is quite unrelated to what's going on at Grensásvegur because the plume is so narrow coming down the mountain. So, that was the asthma medication. Hospital admissions and ER visit. I put the picture of Eyjafjallajökull because we did this study and then the volcano erupted and I got busy doing other things. So I didn't really, always wanted to go back to the hydrogen sulfide, but I didn't have the time. But now I was forced. We did a study of hospital admissions and ER visits, and we published those results in this year actually, but included only. We did not include the hydrogen sulfide in the published study because there was too little data because the hydrogen sulfide measurement started in 2006 and that was not sufficient amount of days with good data to have a proper study. But we now have the hospital admissions data back up to 2012 of all adults who have visited the ER or been admitted to hospital in the capital area for a diagnosis that we have specified, which is either cardiopulmonary or stroke. And in this study we have used the same methods basically as in the previous study, but we only use lags 0 to 8 because usually hospital admissions, the health effect is not delayed by the fact that in the asthma medication study you expect people to maybe have some medication at home, so they won't need it right away, but you will go to the hospital. That will not be as long a lag. So that's the major difference here. We have the data back to 2003, but of course only the hydrogen sulfide from 2006 as usual. These people are older. They're 63 years old in the mean. They're slightly more males and females, but in the asthma medication study it was 60% women, and some of them do come back, but we have but that's because these are older people who have various ailments. In this data I have split the data by males and females and the various diagnosis categories, so lung disease, cardiac disease, and neurological causes, which is stroke. But that's quite few individuals. So if we take all, then we have the same here. We have like 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and here you have the increased, the difference in risk associated with hydrogen sulfide in the study, and then again we have the unadjusted to the left and the adjusted to the right. And here it's a bit messy. There's maybe something in lag 2, or is it 3? No, lag 3, which is sort of borderline adjusted. But this is all admissions. Females, very flat until lag 3. Males, quite flat. And then cardiac conditions. Not a lot going on, some borderline significance. Pulmonary, however, we have at lag 3 somewhat of a signal. And the stroke diagnosis is but you can see the confidence intervals are very, very wide here. So that's because we are running out of statistical power. So to summarize, the hospital admissions, we found if you pool the lag coefficients, you find an increase of 5%. I can't at this point in the analysis say if this is statistically significant. I think it maybe isn't, but it seems to be a bit stronger in women than in men. And it seems to be that there was no effect for neurological diagnosis, but there was most in cardiac and pulmonary. So, in conclusion of this, that I would say that these results from the hospital data is somewhat very much in sync with the results from the pharmaceutical dispensing from the asthma medication study, but the signal from the hospital admissions is not nowhere near as clear. And also the fact that we seem to have more effect in women is that usually women have better exposure assignment at the home. Women tend to spend more time at home, so when you use residential address as your exposure metric, the women somehow fit better. It's a drawback of this of both of these studies that it's not been possible to adjust for any personal confounders, since these are sort of ecological. Now I try to stratify for age, gender, and residence, but you don't know anything about smoking, other diseases, where people work. As Dr. Bates told us, that you spend a significant time of your life at work. So what is that is significant. Also, a thing that I was just thinking about as I was going through this, someone asked about peak exposure. This is, of course, short-term exposure, but I have still used the 24-hour means as to evaluate the exposure in these studies. And I think maybe the daily maximum, the highest level would be more interesting than the 24-hour mean. Because we saw that actually in the asthma medication study that was more significant, and the model fit better. So I'm going to do that next. Also, I adjusted for weather in these studies, and I'm not quite sure about that. As we've heard, this is with hydrogen sulfide, it's a quite specific set of weather conditions that is required. But I think it could be some of the same set of weather conditions, like very cold, still and dry weather, that is quite irritating for people with, especially with regard to the asthma, because they have there are a number of studies that report that it gets more severe in cold weather with very cold and dry climate. But I hope to get a good debate going about this, and thank you for your attention.